Welcome to the deep dive. So today we're moving beyond the usual financial statement audits. We're plunging into attestation engagements based on some materials you flagged as a growing area.
That's right. It's definitely becoming more relevant.
Our mission then is to sort of unpack what these are, why they matter, and crucially, the different levels of assurance they actually provide.
Sounds good.
Okay, so first things first. What is an attest engagement? Can we break that down simply?
Sure. Well, think of it like this. A CPA provides this independent report, but it's about something specific, the subject matter, or maybe a claim, an assertion about that subject matter.
Okay.
And crucially, that subject matter is someone else's responsibility, usually management's.
So the CPA isn't responsible for the thing itself, just checking it out.
Exactly. They're essentially providing an independent, stamp of approval on information that goes beyond just the balance sheet or income statement.
A stamp of approval. I like that.
Yeah.
So what kinds of stamps are there? Are they all the same strength?
No, definitely not. There are three main levels, really, each offering a different degree of confidence. First up, you've got an examination.
Examination. Sounds serious.
It is. It provides an opinion, which is a high level of assurance. This means we've done quite a bit of work procedures like search, verification, inquiry, analysis. It's pretty thorough.
High low. Okay, so they really kicked the tires. What's the next step down?
That would be a review. A review results in a conclusion, not an opinion, and it offers a moderate level of assurance.
Moderate. So less digging than an examination.
Generally, yes. It typically involves more inquiry, asking questions, and analytical procedures, looking at relationships and trends. Less intensive.
Gotcha. Moderate assurance.
Yeah.
And the third type.
The third one is agreed upon procedures. This one's, well, quite different.
How so?
Because here, the CPA provides no assurance at all, no opinion, no conclusion. They just perform very specific procedures that the parties agreed on beforehand.
Oh, interesting.
Yeah, and then they just report the findings based only on those specific procedures. It's basically, we did X, Y, and Z, and here's what we found.
Right, just the facts based on the agreed steps. Now, you mentioned subject matter and assertions earlier. Can you give some examples? What are we actually talking about here?
Sure. The underlying subject matter is the thing being evaluated. It could be, say, compliance with specific regulations, or the effectiveness of internal controls over security, or even greenhouse gas emissions data.
Okay, so pretty broad.
Very broad. And an assertion is usually management's statement about that subject matter meeting certain criteria. Like, management asserts their security controls are effective.
Makes sense.
But sometimes, especially in an examination, we might perform a direct engagement. That's where there isn't a formal written assertion from management provided to us. We just directly evaluate the subject matter against the criteria ourselves.
Wow, okay. So who sets the rules for all this? Is there a specific rule book?
The main standard-setting body is the AICPA, the American Institute of CPAs, and the rules are called the Statements on Standards for Attestation Engagements, or SSAEs.
SAEs, got it.
These cover everything from agreed-upon procedures, financial forecasts and projections, compliance attestation, reporting on controls at a service organization. SOC reports all that falls under SSAEs.
That's a wide range. What doesn't fall under SSAEs, and where's the boundary?
Good question. Critically, SSAEs don't cover traditional financial statement audits. Those have their own standards. SAS for private companies, PCAOB standards for public ones.
Right, separate worlds.
Also, SSAEs don't apply to preparing, compiling, or reviewing basic historical financial statements, that's SRs, and things like tax return prep, most consulting gigs, or audits of internal control integrated with a financial audit. Those are guided by other standards, too.
Okay, important to keep those separate.
Yeah.
Now, I saw a mnemonic mentioned Cape Corp. What's that about? Sounds like a company name.
Huh? Yeah, it does. It's actually a way to remember the common concepts, the fundamental principles that apply across all attestation engagements, examinations, reviews, and agreed-upon procedures.
Yeah, let's break it down.
C. C is for compliance with all relevant attestation standards. Got to follow the rules.
Makes sense. A.
A is acceptance and continuance, deciding whether to take on or keep the client and the specific engagement. Making sure it's appropriate. P. P is for preconditions. Key things need to be in place before we start, like the practitioner being independent and, crucially, the responsible party acknowledging and accepting their responsibility for the subject matter.
Right, that responsibility point again. E.
E is engagement documentation, basically keeping a good record of what we did.
Standard practice.
Mm-hmm.
The second C.
Change in terms. Agreeing if the scope or terms of the engagement need to change midway.
Oh.
O is for using the work of an other practitioner, if applicable. R is the firm's responsibility for its system of quality control, ensuring work is consistently high quality.
And the final P.
The second P is for professional skepticism and professional judgment, thinking critically and making informed decisions throughout the engagement.
Cape E Corp. That's actually pretty helpful. Now, shifting gears slightly for examinations and reviews, but not agreed upon procedures, you said there's this concept of attestation risk.
Hmm.
What is that?
Right. Attestation risk is the risk that the practitioner might mess up, that they issue an inappropriate opinion for an examination or a conclusion for a review when the subject matter or assertion is actually materially misstated.
So the risk of getting it wrong.
Essentially, yes.
Yeah.
And like audit risk in financial audits, it has components. There's inherent risk, the susceptibility of the subject matter to misstatement, assuming no controls.
Okay.
Then control risk, the risk that the responsible party's own internal controls won't prevent or detect a material misstatement.
Uh-huh.
And finally, detection risk, the risk that our procedures, the practitioner's procedures, won't detect a misstatement that exists and could be material.
And the practitioner tries to manage this risk through their procedures.
Exactly. By doing more or better work, we reduce detection risk, which helps bring the overall attestation risk down to an acceptable level. But again, this whole risk model doesn't apply to agreed upon procedures because we're not giving an opinion or conclusion there.
Makes sense, since there's no assurance provided. So when the report actually comes out, are there different ways it can be worded? Does it matter?
Yes, it does matter. One nuance is whether the report is on the assertion itself, like, we examine management's assertion that controls are effective, or directly on the subject matter. We examined the company's controls and found them to be effective.
Subtle difference.
It can be.
Yeah.
Generally, for assertion-based engagements, you need that written assertion from management. If you don't have it, that can be a scope limitation.
And scope limitations. That affects the report.
Absolutely. If we can't perform necessary procedures, or if management doesn't provide that assertion when needed, it restricts our scope. Depending on how severe it is, it could lead to a qualified opinion, a disclaimer of opinion, or even withdrawing from the engagement.
Okay, lots to consider there. So wrapping this up, the big picture seems to be that attestation engagements offer varying levels of independent assurance, high, moderate, or none on a huge range of information, well beyond traditional financials.
That's the core of it.
And understanding the specific type of engagement examination or review or agreed upon procedures and the underlying SSE standards is really key to knowing what weight to give that final report.
Precisely. And what's quite interesting, I think, is how these SAE standards are inherently broader than, say, GAA for financial audits. They don't specifically mention historical financial statements or GAAP.
Yeah, that highlights their adaptability, doesn't it?
It really does. It suggests this growing demand for accountability and verification in all sorts of areas of business and information, not just the traditional financial reporting.
It definitely makes you wonder where this is heading. With the complexity of information constantly increasing, how might these attestation services evolve even further? Could we start seeing formal assurance on things like, say, ESG reports, sustainability claims, or maybe even cybersecurity effectiveness or data privacy practices more routinely?
It seems entirely possible. The framework is flexible, and the need for trust in diverse information is only growing. Definitely something to watch.
Food for thought indeed. Well, thanks for breaking down the world of attestation for us today.
My pleasure. It was a good dive.